the shadow of the old state capitol, where Lincoln once called on a house divided to stand together, where common hopes and common dreams still live, I stand before you today to announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America.
I started this investigation by looking at the company that President Obama went to work for after he graduated from Columbia, and it was Business International Corporation, and that was a company that had close ties to the CIA. They used some of their quote-unquote journalists as CIA cover officers overseas. Now, in his book, Obama says, I went to work for a company in Manhattan after I graduated from Columbia, but it was the company, the CIA. It wasn't a company, and he was very disingenuous with about talking about that. This was a company that had access to some of the biggest, most powerful people in the world, including Soviet Premier Alexei Kosygin, Generalissimo Franco of Spain, and obviously this company did outreach to a lot of leftist leaders in places like Africa and Asia and other parts of the world, including Latin America. Ann Dunham Soetoro takes her son at 7 years old into Indonesia following the CIA-inspired coup. 2 years later, Lolo Soetoro's stepfather was called back by General Suharto from Hawaii, where he met Obama's mother in '65, but Obama.
Hi, this is Pastor Joe Green, head pastor of Antioch Assembly, located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you today. The first one is, and you know, the buzz all around is this Black Panther movie, and I had the privilege of going to see the movie, and I will say it was very entertaining. I really enjoyed the movie, me and my son, but one of the things I'd like to chime in with is, you know, it was entertainment. It's a Marvel, they call it the Marvel comic universe. So you have Black Panther, you have the Avengers, you have all these other comic book characters that are now being made into movies. And the reason I want to stress it is just entertainment, because a lot of people, especially black people, are making this a much deeper thing than it should be. You know, people going with dashikis to the movies and, you know, feeling so empowered because of the movie Black Panther. And it shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't, that's not that type of movie, because, you know, the person that made it, I mean, whatever their intentions were, you know, Marvel Studios, it's owned by Disney, made the movie. It's based on a comic book character. There's a lot of different themes, and if you really, as a black person, wanted to analyze the movie at a deeper level and to take some themes from it, you would have to take bad themes or negative themes. And why do I say that? Because the character in the movie, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, the character in the movie that represents the African Americans is the villain in the movie. And it doesn't end up well for him. So if you think about it from that standpoint, then first of all, why would we get so excited about a movie that basically portrays African Americans as the villain? There's a lot of other things that are in the movie that I think are kind of contradictory to what I believe our community needs in order to move forward. You know, there was a great theme of Africans that were the, you know, a tremendous wealthy race of people. They were very advanced in technology and weaponry and all that other stuff. And that was great. But they were basically withholding their technology and their ability to help people. They were holding it to themselves, even while people of color around the world were in a very bad, they were being oppressed and they were in a bad position. So they didn't want to help their fellow people of color. And ultimately, when they did decide, they were, they didn't want to share it with just people of color. They wanted to share it with the rest of the world first. So a lot of underlying themes there that can be deemed as negative. That's why I think it's important for you just to keep the movie on a positive tip. Don't try to analyze it to a deeper degree. Don't try to make it this pro-black thing. If your life now has been transformed by it. And I'm not talking about kids, because children, when we were kids, we can go see Bruce Lee movies at the theater up the street, and we all wanted to be kung fu fighters. So that's what entertainment does to us as young people. But I'm saying the older people and the more mature people and what we call like the woke people, or the black consciousness people, this is not a black consciousness or a woke type of movie. It's a movie that should be seen as entertainment, because it's not going to take you to these high levels of black consciousness that some people are espousing. So anyway, that's my take on it. Of course, everybody has their own opinion. That's just how I saw it. So I wanted you to share a little bit. I heard you mention it before, and we've talked about it. Your exposure to Barack Obama.
My exposure, first of all, let me introduce myself.
Yes, please tell people who you are.
My name is Dr. Randy Short. This is February 20th, 2018. You're in my house. I'm 53 years old, and that doesn't make me too old, but it makes me old enough to see some things. In a nutshell, I entered Harvard School of Divinity in 1988. At the same time as Barack Hussein Obama, who's in the School of Law. If you know the layout of Harvard's campus, the law school and the divinity school, which is its poor sister, are right next to each other. I try to meet people because I like to network. Never go anywhere where you don't know people, And I did meet some people from the law school. I knew James was there, and I want to meet folks who are concerned. Back then, I was concerned about apartheid in South Africa. We're concerned about the high-profile killings, Howard Beach, I think Eleanor Bumpers. There was a killing of, at some point, maybe not exactly the time, but there are a lot of things that were going on then. My stuff up here. Well, I do know James Jones. He's at the law school. His father's a preacher, United Church of Christ, whatever. And he's cool, and we get along, and we talked and so forth. And he knows the students who are standing up. At least I can get lawyers, and they're legit. They're going to fight, they're going to be like Thurgood Marshall, William Hastie, Constance Baker Motley, I'll meet them. I'll hang out with them. And well, I go to the law school, so disgusted by these people. And when I get to the student union building for the Harvard University Law School campus is a building called the Harkness Common. They have your books, the students have their mailboxes, the bookstore, they have like a pub or whatever. I haven't been in there in years, but that's where the folks would hang out. And when I got there, I think this is like a Saturday, the building, which I had been in before, which is lit, it was darkened. I walk in, thinking I'll run into someone, because there are not a lot of black folks, but there's some. There are more at the law school and the divinity school. And I see white folks looking at me like, what the hell are you doing in here inward? Should I have as much right to be there as anyone else? I'm not moving. And I'm looking, facing. I see a sign, something for the Federalist Society. Federalist Society is a group put together by Ward Connerly. He's a black Republican that hates the Civil Rights Movement, Voting Rights Act, hates affirmative action. He's the one who spearheaded this whole move to prevent blacks from getting into the University of California system. He funds the Federalist Society to inculcate anti-remediation social remediation programs for blacks to get entree into America. I didn't know that, but I remember seeing the sign, and I did know that the early Federalists were slaveholders because as a history person, so I'm like, ooh. As I'm walking, I begin to hear a loudspeaker. I hear someone speaking, and they're saying lots of really ugly, racist, nasty things about black people. I saw, as I was hearing the laughter of what sounded like a white audience, and in my mind I literally saw, for the first time, Obama. I saw a person about 6'1", medium to light in complexion, short afro. I assume they're biracial and they're bisexual. It's the first reading I got. I didn't even see him. I began walking up to the hall because I went to Howard. We would go in and turn meetings out. You know, if you're an activist student.
Especially from D.C.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go in. We just flip. I'll just go and call you up and say, dude, you a punk in the first place. I mean, you used to bend it over, so just sit down. You know, this is the thing that said just go off because he's saying stuff like, I don't like black folks. Who likes black people? They're this and that. And he's saying all the stuff, and the white folks are just laughing as he's just clowning. Black folks. And he started talking about how he hated the BSA, BALSA, Black Law School Student Association, and how they're annoying and nobody likes them, but they trust me because I look like them. This is something Obama's saying. Put me in charge, and I can control them for you. All right? I get to the point, he started talking about, these radicals, they're always fighting. These people always making trouble. Why can't they just get along? We're the best school in the world, right? And just about that point, where they're gathered, I walk up, and they're seated in rows, and Obama's up at a podium or something, and we see each other, just like I'm looking at the camera. I look at Obama, he gets nervous, and for a second I'm thinking, do I bust up this meeting and call out this half-breed sodomite? What do I do? And I look and I say, oh my God, he's already lost 2 times, 3 times. He hates being black and he's half white. He hates justice and he needs it just like anybody else. And he's sexually confused and proud of it. I mean, he's not salvageable. And on top of that, if I take on him, I've got all these new white enemies who he's going to side with in turn on me. It's Custer's Last Stand. One of my favorite books from elementary school is about a little bighorn. Custer bit off more than he could chew and he got stomped. When you can't win, retreating is a decisive choice. And so when Obama realizes, I'm just standing there furious, and the whites look back, then he makes a joke. See what I'm talking about? And they all bust out laughing that something's wrong with me. And I go out, because I come in the south side of the Harkness Commons. There's 2 double doors, if I'm correct. There's 2 double steel doors, that you have to push. And I go out the north side, and I've got to talk to somebody about what I've just seen, this kind of betrayal. I knew something of the fact that there was a struggle for the Harvard Law Review because people that my father worked with and I knew were active at Harvard. I had been going to Boston back and forth since '83, and it had intensified. It'd probably been up in Boston, hung around up on the campus since '86. You follow what I'm saying? So this is 2 years of continually taking the long commuter train up to Boston. So I knew something about the campus politics and how the police, just maybe towards the end of the last semester of '88, the police had staged a riot on the black students at the law school. Yeah, they just started fighting with them. They were angry because what they were doing, this is how it is at Harvard, white students could walk around and no one would ask them for their ID. Harvard's IDs did not have pictures on it. So if you had the card, that was enough. They were asking for photo ID on top of having the Harvard ID card to prove they were who they were. They didn't do that to whites. Okay. Anyway, I storm out and I see some black guys in one of the dormitories smoking. I don't remember. I think some were smoking cigarettes, some were smoking weed. And I knew I needed to know who was that coon? Who was this ACDC sellout? Because he was gifted in lying, gifted in deceit, gifted in betrayal. I mean, that was my initial thing. I just got him.
And very smooth, it seemed.
Very. He had a gift to do this, to lie to people. And I'm from Washington. I remember Richard Nixon. I was here with Watergate and all this other kind of stuff. You know, it was just before school opened up. I remember us all being in the house cheering that Nixon, you know, was crying. Remember, a big snot bubble came out of his nose. My mother, she was an angel, right? Never hate. And he's saying all this stupid stuff. So I remember all this stuff, and so I know deceit. I mean, so I say, hey, who's the half-breed in there? I mean, he's got a future ahead of him. And they said, oh, that's Obama. Well, you're from D.C., right? You know, Bama is like a low-life, no-good, backstabbing nigga, right? Obama. And I says, that's his name, Obama. I says, oh, damn. He sure is Obama. Says, you know what? He's going to go all the way. He'll be president one day. The way he's lying, he lies better than Nixon. He's going to stab us in the back and walk over us to get there. And I just says, oh, my God, Obama. I got to remember that. And the first thing I did was I found a payphone or something, and I called one of my best buddies from Howard. His name is Eric Shanks.
So you were saying that you went out and you asked the students about this Obama character.
Well, no, I didn't have a name. I knew I need to know the name of this person. They have an anointing from hell. They are being built up. They are honing their skills. They're going to be at Harvard when they finish. They're going to be in the fast track.
With a bunch of white, influential people
that will use him to do us. And he was the first person I saw, and then I began to recognize there was a system at Harvard where there were people who had white mothers and African or Caribbean fathers. So they didn't have, and they were treated almost as if they were white, and they were used against the black students, even on, you know, if you were in class, I'm telling you, at Harvard, people would say things like blacks are subhuman. And if you objected to that, you could get one of these mixed or whatever, coon mulattoes, whatever you want to call them, biracials, to take the side and say, well, some blacks are inferior. And they would make friends because sometimes the children at Harvard, if you're meeting famous or important people, you're trying to impress someone white to become your patron through their children, their kids.
Sponsor you when you get out.
And they will take you back into their home or their special clubs or groups, and you get yourself established, you get connected to someone white to look after you.
So let me ask you, and I've heard similar things before, so this was somewhat intentional because it sounds like...
Oh, yes. Now, let me give you what was happening. What I said to you, and I talked to this person just the other day. I called my buddy who's an activist at Howard. His name is Eric Shanks. He lives in Oakland, California. And I says, man, there's this gay dude at the law school. They're half white. They hate black people. I says, in 25 years, he's going to be president, or 20 years, and he's going to screw the hell out of black people. And they're going to like him because he's black. He's not going to care nothing about us. He says, man, I'm depressed. He says, all of the black people up here, I'm meeting at these, they hate black people, and they're being groomed to be used to tear us apart. But they've got a nice credential for the school they went to. They're going to look nice. They're going to speak nice. And they're going to dismantle us. And it was depressing just seeing that this is, wow, we're really going to get it. And No one, anyone that can see this won't have the money, power, influence to stop it.
So who are you to speak against this guy?
Right, you're jealous, and now, oh, he's been president, you're broke, he obviously heard something. Fine. Yeah, he had white supremacy and the satanic powers and other things he's connected to push him where he is. Fine. I'd rather have Jesus. Okay, just take that for what that is. Now, what was going on at Harvard at that time, there was a black woman, I think, in 86 or 87 that became the first black person to head the Harvard Law Review. The white students were in an uproar over this. So this created a heightened tension at Harvard Law. That's before I even got to Harvard. They were fighting to try to get another black female or a black person or black folks on the law review. One, you need that because that helps you get
Federal funding.
not federal funding, but it's good on your resume. It gets you in the chief law firms, all that. And Obama betrayed these students by, in particular, the sister who trusted him. I don't know her name. Let me talk to them. And Obama, I literally heard Obama make his pledge that he would put a dagger in the backs of black people, and he would sell them out. But they could make him head of the law review, and the black students would settle for a black person, any old black person, and they would be silly enough to just look at skin color, and they'd be fooled. And Obama told them that this would happen. Okay, it's very cunning. He may not be super bright, but he's cunning.
Harry Lennox, and that's why I got him back on the show. He's got to go, so it's a brief interview. Mancow.com. You can follow him on Twitter. We'll put that up on screen for TV viewers, and I'll give it out to radio listeners. I'm a fan of Harry Lennox just when I've seen him in movies and stuff. He's a very good actor. And it turns out he's basically the same age as Obama and is really good, had been friends with Obama and basically lived with Obama is how he put it. Might as well have lived with him was the words he said to Mancow. He came on Mancow's show, but he got a chance to talk to him off air. And, of course, he's now the hit actor on Blacklist.
Harry Lennox comes in at a low point. I was ready to pull the plug. This guy is the star of the Blacklist, the #1 hottest news show on TV with James Spader. Many will remember, he was the general in Superman. He's a top, maybe the top African-American Shakespearean actor. He's got a version of Henry V coming out. So he's leaving my studio, and he sees a cutout we have of Obama. And he says, well, he's a rat bastard. And I said, what? He goes, oh, because I'm black, I have to like Obama. And we're I mean, the guy's a wonderful human being. He starts laughing. And we're kind of kidding a little. And he says, Mancow, do I remind you of him? And I said, well, I don't want to say anything. He goes, oh, yeah, because all black people are the same. And he's laughing some more. He goes, Mancow, Barack Obama is me. He goes, you've seen me on TV. You've seen me in movies. He is me. And I said, what are you talking about? What are you saying? He goes, do I remind you of Obama? And I said, well, yeah, you do. He goes, he mimicked me. He followed me for years. And they wanted me to train him and teach him how to act. This is Harry Lennox's words. I've got some of my crew here. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And what was the word? Like an educated, Southside educated African-American.
Put your crew member as a witness on. This is national news. Put him on.
Okay.
Which crew member is it?
The guy's name's Nathan. He's one of my producers. Here you go. Oh, sir.
Nathan, this was during a break. Tell us what Lennox said.
Yeah, so exactly what Mancow said. He called me, Barack Obama. He said, that guy's a rat bastard. He goes, he named me for years. I trained him to be a Southside, educated, African-American black man from Chicago. Exactly what Mancow said. And he was taught to act like Barack Obama. Or Harry Lennox was taught Barack Obama.
And it's on record. I looked this up when Mancow told me this yesterday that they are friends and knew each other for years. That's
right. He says he's known him since 1992. Spent many hours with him at his house, talking for hours. He says the only person that knows him better than him would be Michelle Obama.
To me, this is the bomb.
Bring up the CIA stuff. Yeah, bring that up.
Well, CIA, brother, I don't know CIA.
No. Tell me what you told me. But, I mean, get into the fact that you're saying he knew he would be president forever. I mean, repeat what you told me off air.
Well, you just stole my thunder.
Well, go ahead. Say it.
No, look, I said, how long did he know he was going to be president? He said, well, he knew from 1998. And I said, from childhood? He goes, I don't know. I said, but definitely 98. He goes, and maybe earlier. Now, this is a man that hadn't done anything. And Alex, you and I talk about this. Do I have time, or are you going to cut me off?
Yes, you got time. Do it.
Okay. Folks, I understand people, you hate George W. Bush, but then the people that love Obama and he does all the same stuff, I don't care if people hate Obama or hate Bush or hate, as long as they're intellectually honest.
Basically a writer. I'm a historian. I've written about terrorism in Central Europe. I've written about George Bush the Elder. My unauthorized biography of George Bush is, I think, a fairly well-known book on the internet. I've written about the world economic crisis, a book called Surviving the Cataclysm. I've done essays on history called Against Oligarchy. He is a puppet of the Trilateral Commission, and in particular of Zbigniew Brzezinski. And this is a clique of bankers. They ran the Carter administration. Many people today don't remember how disastrous the Carter administration was, but it was a very, very terrible time, economically as well as strategically. And now this same group has groomed another puppet, this time with more preparation, more indoctrination. So this is the moment where this clique of bankers decides to bring in a new face. And this time, not a right-winger, not a neocon, but a left-wing demagogue who promises hope and change, but actually represents policies that are qualitatively worse, qualitatively more destructive, and he can deliver Europe as pawns, as puppets, as expendable assets. Because the project of the next administration in the US, if it's Obama, is going to be not so much wars in the Middle East, but wars on a greater scale. Because Brzezinski says the center of power in the world is not Iran, it's Moscow and Beijing. And therefore, Brzezinski is determined to smash, essentially, Russia and China in the next period ahead in order to let the US-British world domination go on for another 100 years. Now, that's the project. That's more ambitious than any neocon, and it's more adventurous, and it's more dangerous. So people in Europe had better wake up that silly romantic illusion they have about Obama is going to be suicidal for them if they don't understand this. There are right-wingers who don't know how to attack Obama. I would attack Obama in the way that I've just said. He is a puppet of finance capital of the worst possible circles, of David Rockefeller, George Soros, and this group. And their project is extreme austerity, savage reductions in the standard of living, and the basically immiseration and impoverishment of the United States. In terms of foreign policy, it is this plan to have a global showdown with Russia and China. So for that, they need left cover.
And this kind of moves into the topic and what I wanted to talk about today. So the question is that we're 50 years past the civil rights movement, 50 years past Jim Crow laws, 150 years past slavery. And so the question is, why are people of color in America still in such a bad condition? And I want to give a kind of a caveat to that. Is there are people that have been widely successful from our culture. So we had a black president, right? A person of color who was the president of the United States. We have very wealthy individuals, whether they're entertainers or sports figures or even some business people that are people of color that are widely successful. But when you look across the board, when you look at the statistics and understand the actual numbers, we are low on the totem pole. So when you understand as far as average wealth, income, there's a huge gap in the income of black people in America as opposed to whites, Asians, and Jews, even Hispanics. We have a lower percentage of home ownerships than even Hispanics in America. When you look at the incarceration rates, we are among the highest incarcerated race of people in America. When you look at the abortion rate, we have the highest rate of abortions in the black community, and even some communities. New York, for one, in New York City, more black pregnancies end in abortion than birth. So you have to look at these things and understand that we are not where we need to be 150 years after slavery. But why is that? So I want to share a couple of concepts with you and some of the strategies that have been implemented to keep us in that position. And when I say these strategies, some people call it white supremacy. I don't call it white supremacy because I'm looking at it at an even deeper level. We have to understand the globalists, the Kabbalists, the New World Order people. They are the ones behind the scenes that are not only orchestrating the events to cause us to stay in the position that we're in, but they're also amplifying racism where there is no racism in order to manipulate and to control us and to keep us bound. And so even our history, the history of slavery and different things that we have been told and taught, they have reconstructed history in order to promote a certain type of racism that keeps us bound, that keeps us not working together. And if you get a chance to subscribe to my YouTube channel, if you look at some of the videos that I've made, I go into detail from a historical standpoint to look at the real history. And ultimately, because I believe, as I said, I'm the founder of the 2019 movement. As we move into 2019, I think there's going to be a shift and we will have real consciousness of who we are. We will understand that we are the people of the book. We are the people of the Bible. And there's a reason why we've been oppressed for so long, for 400 years now. There's a reason why we have been economically depressed, if you will. There's a reason why we are in the condition that we are in, and we have such a negative status in our country and around the world. And I think that when we really look at the scriptures, we'll understand that better. So, in the book of Exodus, which is, if you follow the 2019 movement, Genesis and Exodus are key for us to understand the pattern that we are in. So in the book of Exodus, this is Pharaoh talking to, he gets some Hebrew midwives. And just to give you the backdrop of what's going on, God had promised Abraham that his descendants would be in Egypt for 400 years. And then God says, I will deliver you with great substance. That's wealth. There was going to be a transfer of wealth once he delivered them. And so when we get to the end of this 400-year period, Moses is born. And Pharaoh, who was into the occult, he was a type of an antichrist. He would have been a globalist, a ruling elite person. He recognized that deliverance was coming through the Most High. And so he puts out this edict to the Hebrew midwives that if they were to have these Hebrew midwives that were helping to deliver the Hebrew babies, he says if a boy is born, kill the baby. If it's a female, let her live. And so what was the strategy? What was the pattern? The pattern was that he wanted to use people from the Hebrew community to help him to implement his globalist agenda against the people of color. And not only that, but there was an attack on the males, there was an attack on the babies, there was a breakdown of the family. The Bible also says that he economically oppressed them because he wanted, he implemented tougher slave sanctions on them, that he wanted them to do more work with less resources. So that's a type of economic oppression, right? So all of these are the themes that we see throughout history and throughout the Bible. The same thing happened during the time of Jesus with Herod. Herod wanted to kill all the male babies, and he wanted to tax the people, and all these other things that were happening during this time period. And so, because the 2019 movement talks about the 2019 represents the 400-year anniversary of the first slaves that came over in the transatlantic slave trade. And what I'm here to tell you that many of those who were transported as slaves weren't just black people, but they were people of God. They were Hebrew people. That's why when they brought them across, it was Africans, it was black people that had enslaved other black people, and the Europeans came over and they traded with many of the European nations for guns, for weapons, and for other things. And so I believe, and like I said, if you look through the videos, that these were Hebrew people, these were black Hebrew people that were taken captive, and they were sold into slavery and brought across the transatlantic to North America and to South America. And and to the Caribbean. And that's why one of the first things that they did was they stripped them of their identity, and they didn't know what nation they came from. So these were the same Hebrews that fled south into Africa when the Romans came in 70 AD and took over Israel. So Pharaoh has this edict. He wants to use people from the community in order to help push his agenda, and it was the destruction of the community, destruction of the family, and all these patterns that we see here in the Bible. Now, I want to share a couple of things with you. The one I want to share with you is a couple of historical figures, W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. And I'm going to bring this full circle, so just bear with me. So W.E.B. Du Bois had this thing called the Talented Tenth. And this was in September of 1903. It says the Negro race, like all races, is going to be saved by its exceptional men. The problem of education, then, among Negroes must first of all deal with the talented tenth. It is the problem of developing the best of this race, that they may guide the mass away from the contamination and death of the worst in their own and other races. Now, the training of men is difficult and an intricate task. Its technique is a matter for educational experts, but its objects is for the vision of seers. If we make money the object of man training, we shall develop money makers, but not necessarily men. If we make technical skill the object of education, we may possess artisans, but not in nature men. Men we shall have only as we make manhood the object of the work of the schools, intelligence, broad sympathy, knowledge of the world, that was and is, and of the relation of men to it. This is the curriculum of that higher education which must underlie true life. On this foundation we may build breadwinning, the skill of hand, and quickness of brain, with never a fear lest the child and man make mistakes that means of living for the object of life. So what W.E.B. Du Bois came up with is this thing he called the talented tenth. So he went and looked in the black race, and he wanted to pick the most intelligent of the top 10% of the black race, and they came up with this thing called the boule. And so, W.E.B. Du Bois said that we have to get the top 10%, and we have to bring them in basically and keep them from being corrupted with the rest of the black race. Now, why is this important? This is important because it was a type of manipulation and control. And so you had during the time of W.E.B. Du Bois another prominent figure, which was Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey had an opposite approach, because Marcus Garvey was about strengthening the black culture. He was even a separatist. So sometimes many times Marcus Garvey wanted a place that was specifically for black people. So there was times that they talked about going back to Africa. There were also actual places that they had considered with making it like a nation that was just of black people. So W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey were at odds with each other, because Marcus Garvey wanted to be self-sufficient as black people and strengthen the race. He was a separatist, segregationalist, if you will. W.E.B. Du Bois didn't want that. What W.E.B. Du Bois did was he wanted to identify the top tier black people and bring them into an organization and basically have them separated from the rest of the black people. Now, with W.E.B. Du Bois, he was a sociologist, and one of the concepts of sociology is called social Darwinism. And what is social Darwinism? Social Darwinism is based on Darwin's theory of not the theory of evolution. The theory of evolution came from Darwin's theory. Darwin's book, which is called, let me see if I have a copy of it close by. Darwin's book is called The Origin of the Species Through Natural Selection. The subtitle for Charles Darwin's book is The Race to Preserve the Favored Races in the Fight for Life. So what Darwin proposed, or what his theory was, is because, and this is what the theory of evolution comes from, is that man has evolved from apes. So because they proposed, or they theorized that man evolved from apes, they also came with the counter argument, or not counter argument, but a sub argument, that because man evolved from apes, that some men were more evolved than others, and some men were less evolved. So because the subtitle of his book is The Race to Preserve the Favored Races, social Darwinism says that some men are evolved more, and that because other men are less evolved, they're almost like animalistic. And that was the way that the slave owners were able to perpetuate chattel slavery. And I'm going to define that for you. Chattel slavery that was done and perpetuated forever, chattel as opposed to indentured servitude, because when slavery first started in 1619, it was indentured servitude. When you look in the Bible, when it talks about slavery, it's not talking about chattel slavery, it's talking about indentured servitude. With indentured servitude, you were a slave, or you were a servant for a certain period of time, and then you had the option to be free. That's why in the Bible it has a year of Jubilee and other concepts that you were indentured servant until a certain period of time, or until a debt was paid off, and then you had your freedom. So chattel slavery started in America, which meant that the slave, the servant, wasn't just an indentured servant, but they became property. Chattel slavery. It's almost like the concept of cattle, that you are property, personal property that can be owned, can be sold, and can be traded like human beings should. And so if you have this social Darwinism, it justified the fact that there was chattel slavery, because they believed that these people of color were not, they were subhuman. And think about it for a second. When you perpetuate that concept of people being less than human, this social Darwinism, then you don't feel bad, or it doesn't allow for the guilt of enslaving people, because you don't believe. That's what the Nazis, the eugenics movement with the Nazis in Germany, the same thing. They said that these Jews didn't have a soul. They didn't have souls, which is why they were able to treat them the way they did. The slavery is based on that. And so the W.E.B. Du Bois thing of the talented tenth is kind of a offshoot of this concept of Charles Darwin, social Darwinism. They believe that only the top 10% of black people were worthy, and that the other 90% would never be able to move to the next level. So what W.E.B. Du Bois did was he came up with this idea of the talented tenth, and then in 1904 there was this group called the Black Boule that was created in Philadelphia. And I'm going somewhere with this, so bear with me. In 1904, the first African American Greek society, called the Boule, was formed in Philadelphia by Dr. Henry Menton and 5 of his colleagues. The Boule, which is Sigma Pi Phi, pronounced Boule, was formed to bring together the select group of educated black men and women fashioned after Yale's Skull and Bones. And so they came up with this concept of the Boule that was not only meant to identify the top 10%, but also to use them in order to manipulate or to control the rest of the black population. And if you understand Yale Skull and Bones, which many of our former presidents, President Bush, John Kerry, and some of these were part of Skull and Bones. They're a secret society that's used by the globalists in order to control the masses. So the Boule was patterned after Skull and Bones' secret society, but it was meant specifically for people of color. Now, why is this so important? This is so important because the word Boule means a reporter to the king. So what they do is they are actually like Pharaoh did. Pharaoh tried to get the Hebrew midwives to work for him against their own culture. And so, they may not admit it, but the Boule, basically, that's what they do. They are accepted by the powers that be, by the globalists, and they're given fame and fortune and status, and with the promises of future wealth and future status, but it's at a price. So they have to swear allegiance to these secret societies, and at the end of the day, they don't do what's in the best interest of black people as a whole. They push the agenda of the organizations that they are a part of. Now, within this is what's reported about the Boule. And if you get a chance to look up Stephen Coakley died in 2012, and he was one that did extensive research on the Boule, and he does talks. There's a lot of talks, and there's books that he wrote about the Boule. So it says what do these Boule members get in return? It says, joining the exclusive secret society offered advancement and perks to the select blacks in return for loyalty to its objectives. The Boule recruits top blacks in American society into its ranks. Today, 5,000 plus archons, which are male Boule members, and their wives, what are called arkusis, with 112 chapters, make up the wealthiest group of black men and women on the planet. And archon, here's the interesting thing, they're called archons, but archon, the definition of archon is a demon, the kind that is kept hidden. But they serve the global elite, the Kabbalists, the synagogue of Satan, if you will. If you get a chance to look at my videos on that, that's who they are actually loyal to. That's who they serve. It says, as long as the black member conforms to the rules, the riches will be in abundance. If not, down comes the hatchet, and blackmail is a part of the deal. So I'm going to, share with you some of the Boule members, and most of them don't advertise that they're Boule. They're secret societies. It's like Masonic organizations. What the Boule does is they use black Greek letter organizations as a feeder system to identify people and to invite them to the upper echelons. So if you look at just about all of our black civil rights leaders, entertainers, etc., 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 they're either Boule members and or they are members of the Greek fraternity organizations. So the Masonic secret society has a pyramid style like all the rest. The lower ranks are kept from knowing what the upper ranks are doing. Marcus Garvey had this Back to Africa, like I said, movement. He was a segregationalist, and he wanted to build up the black community as opposed to wanting to assimilate into the larger white society. And so W.E.B. Du Bois and the Boule and people of that mindset, they weren't interested in building up just the black culture. They wanted to be assimilated into the white culture. And so because of that, they took oaths, swore allegiance to the larger organizations, and then they got what they wanted, but then part of the deal was they controlled the rest of the masses. And let me say for the record that a lot of these people that are involved with this, just like high-ranking Masonic organizations, in the beginning they don't know all the details. As they move up the chain, they do, and a lot of time, most of them are being blackmailed because they enter into some kind of ritual. They have to enter into rituals that are very degrading to themselves. Many of them are compromised, whether it's through money or whether it's through sexual improprieties or things of that nature. If you look at, and I'll share with you, but Bill Cosby is reported to be a Boule member, and so because Bill Cosby got to a place where he stopped to agree with and promote the Boule's agenda, now he's going through these, all this stuff with the sexual assault and rape charges that he has. And that's why I always say, if you looked at my other videos, is that whatever Bill Cosby did, he had been doing it for 50 years. Everybody knew. Why is it that all of a sudden now they all came to the surface? And the media as a whole is helping to promote this. And I believe it's because he broke the oath that he was supposed to uphold by being a part of this. And again, I say I believe this. So this is based on my research and based on this is what I believe has happened. So W.E.B. Du Bois, as I mentioned, who was a founding member of the New York City chapter of the Boule, said, this is a quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, "The Boule was created to keep the black professional away from Marcus Garvey. The remaking of the House Negro was necessary to institute a group of blacks who had a vested interest in protecting the elite white system. It was about selling out brothers and sisters for power and money. The majority of black lawyers, doctors, engineers, and accountants were members of the secret society." This is what Stephen Coakley said, and he did extensive research about the Boule. The late conspiracy, it says, the late, great Steve Coakley had this to say: "Anywhere there are prominent professional blacks, chances are they're in the Boule. Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson are reported to have been Boule members. Among many other high-profile, successful, and moneyed blacks are Bill Cosby, Al Sharpton, Thurgood Marshall, and Barack Obama." And I'm going to talk about that. And if anybody has followed me ever since 2008, I've been kind of sharing some of this information because Barack Obama was not an organic movement of somebody who just worked his way up. He was chosen by the ruling elite because of the fact that they knew that be used to manipulate the masses, which is why after 8 years of the Barack Obama administration, black people are actually in worse condition compared to the rest of the nation. The black unemployment rate is still 2 or 3 times, or was 2 or 3 times that of white America at the end of Barack Obama's presidency. So if you understand that he was part of the Boule, and I'm going to share a interview I did with a friend of mine, Dr. Randy Short, who was actually a student at Harvard University during the same time that former President Barack Obama was. The members of the Boule pose as freedom fighters, civil rights activists, and on the surface, in truth, they are elite members operating for personal gain. The Boule works in concert with their masters in maintaining the grip of Illuminati supremacy on their people. The Boule is another arm of the nefarious secret societies that recruit, indoctrinate, and call for the dark forces. Therein are perks galore, power, notoriety, all lying in wait for the easily compromised soul. In the Greek system, the Boule was the lower house of parliament, charged with organizing the affairs of the city for the king. This ancient story, the New World Order, is the Old World Order that's revisited. The elite blacks of the Boule are culling and controlling their own for a slice of the elite white man's pie. This is what this author says. And again, let me give you some other names that were reported to be Boule members. They said they found this one of the logs or the books of the Boule members. And okay, well, let me give you this first. I talked about the Greek letter organizations. It said, okay, so in 1904 the Boule was started, and then soon after that they started the Black Greek letter organizations. So you have, of course, Alpha Phi Alpha, Kappa Alpha Psi, Omega Psi Phi, Phi Beta Sigma. You have the sororities Alpha Kappa Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, Zeta Phi Beta, and Sigma Gamma Rho. And they were actually created as a feeder system for the Boule, which is why, if you think about this, why would black organizations pattern after the Greek organizations? Which, if you understand the Greek culture actually stole much of their culture from Egyptians, and Egypt is in Africa. So, but the reason being is because the Boule is a Greek-style European organization. Here's some of the other names of reported Boule members. Dr. Nathan Hale Williams, who performed the first open heart surgery. Ralph Bunche, who was the former UN ambassador. Arthur Ashe, James Baldwin, Whitney Young, who was the Urban League president. Martin Luther King Jr., Benjamin Mays, George Washington Carver, and Carter G. Woodson. And none of them had admitted that they were part of the Boule, even though most people knew that Martin Luther King was an Alpha Phi Alpha. Now think about this: if you believe the reports of what this research stated, and these people swear allegiance, and they have to carry out the plan of overall of their of the ruling elite. Think about Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King didn't get killed for his civil rights. He didn't get killed for housing segregation. He got assassinated when he started speaking out against the Vietnam War. And why is that important? The reason that's important is because the Vietnam War was the war that was orchestrated by the international bankers for reasons other than what it was stated. So that's when he got assassinated, not for the civil rights movement. He got assassinated when he started speaking out against the Vietnam War. And because the ruling elite used wars for money, because they financed wars, they also used, like in Vietnam, they had a lot of poppy seeds. So at the same time that the American army was in Vietnam, heroin, opium products flooded the streets of United States. If you think about now, we have what's called an opioid epidemic. Where's the United States Army right now? The United States Army is in Afghanistan, which has a large amount of poppy fields. So I don't think that this is any coincidence. When you understand the international drug trade is run by the secret societies, the international bankers, the CIA is a tool of the international bankers, the intelligence agencies. In the 80s, with the Iran-Contra situation, It all came out that the CIA was complicit to the crack cocaine epidemic in the black neighborhoods. If you think about in the 60s, like I said, heroin and opium products were flooding the United States. And now in 2018, we have an opioid crisis, all the while the United States Army is in Afghanistan. And I would say to you that we have the most powerful army in the world. How is it that huge amounts of opioid products are able to hit our streets, and the source of the opioid is these poppy fields, and many of it comes from Afghanistan? Maynard Jackson, Hank Aaron, Tom Bradley, Dennis Archer, who was the mayor of Detroit, Alvin Hayes, Bill Cosby, Jesse Jackson, Earl Graves, John H. Johnson, Douglas Wilder, Johnny Cochran, John Singleton, Lynn Swan, David Dinkins, who was the mayor of New York formerly, and many other prominent people. So that's the boule. And like I said, the strategy, the pattern that the enemy always uses against the people is always the same. He just changes it. So what the ruling elite does is they identify the talented 10th, people that are influential or very talented from outside of the community, from within the black community. They invite them to be a part of these organizations. They give them money, fame, and wealth. Money, wealth, and power, and status. But they have to carry out the agenda of the ruling elite. Which is why, like my previous statement was, how is it that we have all these wealthy and powerful people of color, but yet our communities are still in shambles? How could Chicago, Illinois be such a violent, gang-infested drug area when some of the most powerful black leaders in the world are from Chicago? Oprah's from Chicago. President Obama was supposed to be from Chicago. He was a transplant to Chicago. Jesse Jackson, Minister Farrakhan, all these people are from Chicago, yet they have all this wealth, all this power, all this influence, but yet they can't seem to solve the problems of Chicago and all over other places as well. So it just begs the question of are these things true, and if so, what's going on? So I'm going to share some other information because, as I stated before, that's what their strategy is. The CIA is always a part of that, and you have to, and it's been reported that President Obama was a CIA creation. His grandparents were definitely a part of the CIA. It was reported. His mother was as well, and so it would only make sense that that's how he was able to do what he did do. And so I'm going to share some videos and some information to verify what I'm saying. Like I said, the stuff that I share with you, I don't just come up with these things. I do the research. I'll give you the resources. You'll see it so you can check it out for yourself. But understand that what I found is usually the things that are on the surface with the media, with the entertainment world, and with the popular narrative usually isn't the right one, because the people that are controlling the information are people that are complicit to the global New World agenda. And the Bible says that the ruler of this world has blinded many so that they can't see the truth. But the thing of it is, if you're watching this video, hopefully you'll be a pursuer of the truth. Hopefully you will listen to the truth. You will seek after truth. You will love truth as God wants us to. And as the Bible says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Until next time, be blessed. I love you guys, and just keep on getting the information out there. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, my Patreon channel. And, these things that we talk about are not easy, and your support is greatly appreciated. And, I believe that we're entering into a very critical time as we enter into 2019, because God is going to bring deliverance. He wants to open the eyes of the blind, and He wants to transfer great amounts of wealth, because it is the promise that He has given us that He will deliver us, and with great substance. Be blessed of the Lord.
To get an idea of what the Boule Man was, we're going to take a look at Boule on Wiki. In ancient Greece, it originated from a council of nobles who advised the king. It consisted of 400 to 500 citizens who were put in charge of running day-to-day city affairs. So they were like the face of the public who went back and reported to the king what was going on. So that gives us a bit of insight as to why Boule even came about in the first place. But I guess the question today lies in, what was the reason for the black boule of the 1900s?
The Bible said they put taskmasters, gatekeepers. If you ever did you see the movie 12 Years a Slave? Remember the movie 12 Years a Slave where the white man was raping the black girl and he was wanting to whoop her, but he gave the whip to the black man to whoop her. They always get the taskmaster. This was the house Negro, field Negro syndrome, where they always give some blacks a little more privilege and he would keep the rest of them down. This is what the boule is.
The boule fashioned themselves after Yale's Skull and Bones, an undergraduate senior secret society.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go wild. Sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web. Number 322. For both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret. Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code? I wish there were something secret I could manifest. 322, secret number? There are all kinds of secrets, Tim.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
The heavy Greek influence could very well stem from Alexander conquering Rhodotus around 331 BC in Egypt. Rhodotus was its original name before he conquered it and later named it Alexandria of Egypt on his 10-year Hellenic conquest to conquer Persia. This part of the time was known as the Hellenistic civilization, where Greek culture was forced upon non-Greeks. A very important event during Alex's conquest is where he learned alchemy and all Egyptians' ancient practices. Alex's successor, Ptolemy Soter, I could say that wrong, I'll place it on the screen if I did, a Macedonian general, created a library that held an estimate of 40,000 to 400,000 papyrus scrolls. It was known as the most famous library, and it fell victim to many fires, the last fire taking it out, making it famous, known as the loss of cultural knowledge. This library displayed Egypt's wealth, its research, and all the information it had gathered from around the world and was translated onto papyrus scrolls. They even attended book fairs from around the world in numerous libraries and gathered all these different books and original scrolls. It is unknown who was solely responsible for its fall, but it is known that Julius Caesar of Rome set at least one, if not all, the fires in 48 BC.
What we're looking for here is, says the colors of the fraternity shall be blue and white. It says the official insignia of the fraternity shall be a pen bearing the figure of a Grecian sphinx and urn. I thought it was interesting that when Warren Christopher went to the Middle East, Brother Ashwa, the place he went was to the Sphinx. And I need you to teach us something about this, about why he may have went there. And in the story, it says his code name is Sphinx. This is the vice chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's a part of that secret society that Cecil Rhodes set up. He's the vice chairman of it. That's why he chaired the Commission on Your Rebellion, because he's in charge of all Negroes. He's now Secretary of State, in charge of Negroes worldwide. Secretary of State Christopher walks from the Sphinx, which he called, quote, a reminder of the tremendous contribution Egypt has made to modern civilization. Now, them ain't the right guys, buddy. Boy, them are not the guys. But he went there. Early on his first day of his just concluded Middle East trip, before before the official talks with Egyptian leaders were to begin, Christopher made a walking tour of the nation's most famous landmark, the pyramids and the Sphinx, and about why he's there and what's there. So now we know that the logo is called the Grecian Sphinx. We also know that we found Brother Maurice. When we first found about the Grecian Sphinx, we actually were looking at the logo, and we felt that the logo was a griffin, because a griffin seemed to be similar to the concept of the Grecian Sphinx. And it was our thought that that was a griffin that was there, and Brother Maurice looked up what the griffin meant in Webster's dictionary. And you can see that it says something about the griffin. Right. Now it talks about the fabulous bird with the wings and 4 legs and the ears and all of that. But in the second definition of a griffin, origin unknown, it says a white person new to the East. What? Yeah. One recently come from the Occident. That means what? White man. That's deep. And then a griffinage, the state of being a white person recently come from the East. Damn. And then it says Griffinite, Griffin Park, Los Angeles. So the griffin stands over you from the highest point, looking over all that you are. They call it Griffin Park, and its conclave is the Greek theater.
That weekend, the Boule was meeting here, July of 1990. They were having their twice every other year convention, biannual. And it was a front page article in the LA Times by Karen Grigsby Gates, who denoted that these elite black men were meeting in Los Angeles at this time. That was the first. I remember sending someone to the car to bring it in, and we read it from the stage of the Boule on July 18th, the day the story appeared, front page LA Times. And I thought it was unusual that the LA Times knew of this society, and I didn't know of them. Now, for our audience to understand, I'm starting off trying to explain to black people the impact of international policy groups like the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, when the bankers began to take over the American cities in the 70s, New York 75, Cleveland 77, Chicago 79, and here in California they used Proposition 13 to suck up the surplus out the budget, and bankers began to take over from municipalities the governing of the cities. And as I was scratching, I could not figure out how was there such black complicity in this centralization of worldwide power, the New World Order. It's on the dollar bill, pyramid by white men who never built one, never saw one, but they emulated this symbol. And now comes a series of societies, and now comes forth this black one in 1904. As we began to read deeper, it had another analogy in the story to Skull and Bones. It wasn't until we got the history book that the analogy that looked happenstantial in the story in the LA Times was actually deeper in the actual history book, where they drew attention to Skull and Bones. It denoted that W.E.B. Du Bois was a member, and it began to describe people, influential people in the present-day society, and historically, our university, historically black college presidents are primarily coming out of this, advisors to the king. And that word, that Boule word, can be looked up in a encyclopedia. Well, now people don't use them, they use internet. And that's a dangerous thing, a dangerous dependency. But Boule, B-O-U-L-E, the Greek version. There's a French version that's a coming together, a conclave, the AKA called their convention, the Boule. But the Greek word is what we're looking for, the advisors to the king. The lower house of the Greek parliament is called Boule. And if you know the American congressional system, Senate, 6 years, more power, authority, only 100. 2 per state. Congress, 435, have to run every 2 years. Your lower house has less power and authority. So it appears as if, in finding the Boule, that within it was a subordination to something else. And in its history book, it drew attention. Here's a logo. And this is their logo is a Grecian Sphinx. It's an animal. And this Grecian Sphinx is similar to a griffin or a gargoyle. Kind of ironically, the Boule had their convention in Los Angeles in 1941. And where else? Griffin Park. And this this logo, this symbol, is a guardian animal. This would be similar to a Rottweiler or a dog or a German Shepherd. They tend to protect something higher than itself.
Let me ask you a question. I went to Howard University, for instance, and a number of African so-called Greek societies, fraternities, as well as in our community, there's a number of secret, semi-secret organizations. How is the Boule different than the numerous fraternities and groups in our community? What is the relationship to the ruling class?
Father, son. The nine make up the axis of the Black Greek dynasty. There are 4 male societies, 4 female societies, and the Boule make the 9th one. They're the first, 1904 series, the Alphas. I'm not versed in the exact order, but I have all of their history books, and each of them draw attention to things where they got their ritual from. The Deltas draw attention to Freemasonry, said our ritual came from Mary Church Terrell, whose husband, Robert Terrell, was head of the Masonic Lodge in Washington, D.C. Mary Church Terrell, Mary Church, is the daughter of the first black millionaire in America, Robert Church of Memphis, Tennessee. Huge mausoleum to him there. Those societies, those 4 male, those 4 female, and the Boule tend to make up a aristocracy. We talked in the park about the 10%. Not in the sense of us in exclusivity, but them in the terms of deputizing 10% of the population to assure that the 90% never catch on. And it's very important to know that if you look to Alpha Phi Alpha website, there's alphas, kappas, Qs, and Phi Beta Sigma. There's Zeta Phi Beta, Delta Sigma Theta, AKA, and Delta, I'm missing somebody, Sigma Gamma Rho. If you look to, say, the Alpha website, they brag about being 95% of all black lawyers. Now, if the Alphas are 95% of the black lawyers, what does that leave the Kappas, the Qs? Okay, now we're in the 90s. They claim to be 65% of the black accountants, the lawyers, the doctors, dominating. And it may be that our professions are dominated by people in the Greek societies. At Howard, there was a student that I tried to help get a doctorate in engineering. Very exclusive about giving them out. If you get one, you're set for life. Morgan State, Howard are very exclusive. Took big money from governments to make engineers, but the brothers weren't coming out. And when we got deeply involved, we found how close-knit, how selective the professional process is. So he ended up at the patent office. He was a Kappa. He said, we have 15 blacks, 1 female, 14 brothers, and all 14 of us are Kappas. Only Kappas going to get in here. And there are jobs all over where we think we're applying for something fair and open. But I would suggest that the ruling class recognized this was a very significant period, Didon, when they decided that they would give a college degree to a person of African ancestry in America who, after Reconstruction, should have been pretty pissed off. And so they were very weak about.
In terms of young people today who are on college campuses who want to join fraternities and sororities, what is your advice?
It's interesting, the movie Stomp the Yard. I thought that was an interesting attempt to try to reconstruct the options, because they are catching hell in the streets. There is a rise of Kemetic-centered, African-centered societies that are repudiations of Greeks. And this is on the rise on many of the campuses around the country. And many of those fraternities and sororities, like the American military, were finding reduced numbers. Questions of hazing and brutality. And see, that's an important thing about a secret society, is the initiation or the ritual, which is an act of submission. I would never want anyone to underestimate when someone goes on that line and they beat them or they make them do things or unusual things or ridicule them, that act is an act of submission, and that's very essential to keeping a secret society in order. How do you command that subordination? And so for today, when they're on the campuses, they see the Boule. If you look to the Boule Journal, you can look up sigmapiphi.net. You can hit up my website, stevecoakley.com, and then you can link into their website. You look at their Boule Journal, you see what they play up. They're the head of everything. They're announcing every key position they have. They're the advisor to every person, every corporation. They're the black head of American Express. You know, we can just walk on down the line of those that roles were theirs and only theirs. No one got past. You know, I noticed that Harold Washington, our black mayors were uniquely Boule. Andy Young when he was Atlanta, Dinkins when he was New York, Bradley when he was Los Angeles. But none of those men were able to groom their man. So Bradley was mayor 20 years, but didn't have Bradley too. You know, Dinkins couldn't turn it over to anybody. Them white folk walked and beat on his door to run him out. Different cities. Detroit, Coleman Young was not a Boule member. Harold Washington was not a Boule member. And the relationship between the white financial firms and Harold Washington was uniquely different than it was with men who were more trusted.
Okay, we'll take a brief station ID. We'll come back to Brother Steve Coakley, excellent researcher in the question of the Boule. Back to KPFK with Brother Steve Coakley talking about the Boule and the relationship to the struggling African masses, especially the United States of America.